How can we get the MMOs we really want? Let's find out. In most cases, MMOs aren't held back by lack of creative ideas. Often, they are held back by monetization models that restrict freedom in development. And that's what this video is about. How the business models that keep our beloved MMOs alive are also the biggest restriction limiting their potential. So, is there a way out of this treadmill? Or is the MMO genre doomed forever? In one of my previous videos I talked about how we as players can change how we see MMOs and how we enjoy them again. Now I would like to include the developer's point of view and also monetization strategies into the big picture. Right now in 2025, nearly every MMO leans on two proven revenue strategies: cash shops and subscriptions, either paired with buy-to-play or free-to-play modalities. These monetization methods are highly predictable, so they impress investors and they keep the servers running. They are proven. But as a downside, they also shape the game design significantly, and they determine how we as players experience the game, and mostly not in a positive way. In-game progression paths get stretched to sell convenience features that are provided in the shop or as a benefit from a subscription. Cosmetics become a major revenue driver, which can turn MMOs into fancy fashion shows instead of immersive adventures. The truth is, the developers don't necessarily want these restrictive monetization systems, but they are a mandatory trade-off they have to accept if they want to work on their game. And probably this is the aspect that we as players usually don't consider. Development of MMO games in most cases requires enormous budgets, massive teams and constant maintenance even when the game is finished and running. And the monetization isn't optional. It's the foundation that gets the game funded, long before the launch. And when you're spending tens of millions as an investor, you're not going to fuel an untested business model with that amount of money. You will stick with what's proven already. So from a business perspective, this is perfectly understandable. Unfortunately, we as players have a totally different perspective on MMO games, which leads to a major conflict in interest during the whole life cycle of the MMO. So how can we solve this problem? Let's take a look at an example. World of Warcraft has been around for more than 20 years now, with a subscription-based model, combined with pay-to-play when an expansion arrives. And still, tons of people play it. This could either indicate that players surrendered completely and accept Blizzard's conditions without further asking, or it could also indicate that along with solid revenue, you have more space to provide the immersive and epic features that the players crave. Probably for World of Warcraft both applies. Now, let's lean to the other extreme, and let's try to forget corporate thinking for a moment. A legit alternative to successfully existing monetization models could be indie MMOs. Smaller teams don't need blockbuster level revenue to survive. They can take risks that giant studios simply can't. They can experiment with entirely different approaches: community-backed funding, buy-to-play models without a cash shop, cosmetic marketplaces designed around creators, and modular expansions. Just naming a few that came to my mind. That doesn't mean that any of these will successfully work. The point I want to make is that a large studio just can't try these ideas because too much money is on the line. Compared to MMOs created by larger studios, indie MMOs also tend to grow around a tightly knit community. What this does, it reduces the mass market expectation for the game, and it also increases the trust towards the developers. Weird ideas suddenly become viable because the players can clearly communicate them to the developers. There is a very short communication path. And in the end, players are more willing to support the game when they know that their voice is heard by the developers. Of course, indie projects face their own challenges: limited resources, long development times, smaller marketing reach. But in terms of innovation, they are the ones with the freedom to experiment and to try new features. And I think with platforms like Steam, Discord, Reddit, it is pretty easy today for a developer to communicate with the community. This can enable them to get the feedback they need and to respond quickly. So what we can hope for as players is that there will be brave indie studios that can make this change and transform MMO monetization in the long run. Now, if you've ever wondered why MMOs feel held back, the answer might be simple. The safest business models dominate the biggest games, and the biggest games dominate the market. But the future might not come from those giants. It might come from smaller studios, from indie studios, and from community-driven projects willing to explore new paths.